You know that moment when your whole world shifts on its axis? When everything you thought you knew turns out to be a carefully constructed lie? Yeah, well, mine happened at 2:30 in the morning while I was half drunk in my basement workshop, listening to my wife stumble through the front door like a burglar with coordination issues. My name's Cal Turner, and up until that Tuesday night in October, I thought I had a pretty decent life. 42 years old, decent job in IT security, married to Vanessa for 8 years, living in a Victorian row house that's seen better decades but has character. The kind of character that comes with creaky floors, drafty windows, and a basement that doubles as my sanctuary where I tinker with locks, electronics, and the occasional bottle of bourbon. Vanessa was supposed to be at her monthly business mastermind retreat, one of those weekend getaways where aspiring influencers and entrepreneurs gather to talk about synergy and disruption while posting inspirational quotes over sunset photos. She'd been doing these retreats for the past 6 months, part of her grand plan to become the next big thing in lifestyle coaching or wellness consulting or whatever the hell she was calling it that week. I was in the basement, supposedly fixing an old radio, but mostly just drinking and wondering why my wife needed so many weekend retreats to figure out how to sell overpriced smoothie recipes to suburban moms when I heard her key in the lock. 2 hours early, which was weird enough, but what really caught my attention was the sound of her cursing as she apparently tried to navigate our hallway while missing a shoe. Cal? Cal, are you awake? Her voice had that artificially bright tone she used when she was trying to cover something up. Like the time she dented the car and spent 3 days talking about how much she loved our rustic driveway before finally admitting she'd backed into a fire hydrant. Down here, I called back, not moving from my workbench. How was the retreat? Learn any new ways to monetize your authentic self? She appeared at the top of the basement stairs, and even from 15 feet away and through a bourbon haze, I could see something was off. Her hair was messed up in a way that had nothing to do with wind. Her lipstick was smeared, and she was indeed missing her left shoe, a black heel that I'd watched her agonize over that morning because it perfectly captured her brand aesthetic. "Oh, you know how it is," she said, attempting to lean casually against the doorframe and nearly missing it entirely. "Lots of networking. Really intense sessions. I'm exhausted." I took another sip of bourbon and studied her more carefully. There was something on her collar, a smudge of lipstick that was definitely not her shade. Too dark, too red. Vanessa was a nude pink kind of girl, always going on about how bold colors clashed with her personal brand. Intense sessions, huh? I stood up slowly, my locksmith's eye catching something else that made my stomach drop. There was a hotel key card sticking halfway out of her purse, one of those fancy black cards with gold lettering. The Meridian Downtown. The kind of place that charged $300 a night for the privilege of thread counts and artisanal soap. Yeah, we really dove deep into, customer acquisition strategies. She was backing up the stairs now, probably planning to disappear into the bathroom for 20 minutes and emerge with a story about food poisoning or a migraine. But here's the thing about being in IT security. You develop certain skills, like the ability to clone a phone in about 30 seconds when someone leaves it charging on the kitchen counter while they're in the shower. Which I'd done 3 weeks ago, not because I suspected anything, but because Vanessa had this annoying habit of losing her phone and then panicking about missing important business calls that were usually just spam about extended car warranties. So while she was upstairs, probably scrubbing off evidence and rehearsing her story, I pulled up the mirror of her phone on my laptop, and that's when my decent life officially ended. The group chat was called Girls' Night Gossip, and it had 3 participants: Vanessa, her best friend Chloe, and someone named Sienna, who I vaguely remembered as one of Vanessa's newer friends from the co-working space downtown. The messages from that evening made for fascinating reading. Vanessa, 9:47 p.m. OMG, you guys. Axel is incredible. We just finished round 2 and I can barely walk. Chloe, 9:48 p.m. Girl, Details. Is he better than Cal? Vanessa, 9:49 p.m. It's not even close. Cal is like missionary position and asking if I finished. Axel knows exactly what he's doing. Sienna, 9:52 p.m. What if Cal finds out? Vanessa, 9:53 p.m. Please. Cal couldn't find his own ass with both hands and a GPS. He thinks I'm at business retreats. Poor dumb hubby has no clue. Chloe, 9:54 p.m. You're terrible. I love it. When are you going to dump him? Vanessa, 9:56 p.m. Soon. Axel says once his startup gets the next round of funding, we can get a place together. I just need to figure out how to get half of everything without Cal getting suspicious. I sat there staring at the screen, bourbon forgotten, feeling something cold and sharp settling in my chest. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of me working overtime to pay for her business courses and networking events and personal brand consultants. 8 years of listening to her complain about how I wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't supportive enough of her dreams. But wait, there was more. I scrolled up and found a video message from earlier that evening. Vanessa had sent a short clip to the group chat, just 15 seconds, but it was enough. It showed her and some guy I didn't recognize sitting in a booth at the Iron Rail, my favorite bar. The place I'd been going to for 5 years, where Mickey the bartender knew my order and the regulars treated me like family. The guy was young, maybe early 30s, with that perfectly styled hair and expensive, casual look that screamed, tech bro. He had his hand on Vanessa's thigh, and she was leaning into him, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. The timestamp showed it was from 3 hours ago. They'd been at my bar, my place. Probably sitting in my usual booth with my wife playing footsie under the table while this Axel character bought drinks with startup money and talked about disrupting whatever industry was trendy this week. I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling of my basement workshop. The radio I'd been pretending to fix crackled with static, picking up fragments of late-night talk shows and distant music. Upstairs, I could hear Vanessa moving around, probably changing clothes and preparing her story about the retreat that had ended early due to food poisoning or a family emergency or whatever lie seemed most believable. For 8 years, I'd been the dependable husband, the guy who fixed things when they broke, who worked steady hours and paid the bills on time, who listened patiently while Vanessa explained her latest business idea or complained about how the world didn't appreciate her vision. I'd been boring, reliable Cal Turner, the kind of man who women like Vanessa settled for while they waited for someone more exciting to come along. Well, congratulations, honey. You found him. I opened the laptop again and scrolled through more messages, going back weeks. The affair had been going on for at least 2 months, maybe longer. There were photos, explicit messages, detailed plans for their future together. Vanessa had been living a completely separate life, and I'd been too trusting, or too stupid, to notice. But here's what she didn't know about boring, reliable Cal Turner. I hadn't always been in IT. Before I got into security systems and network monitoring, I'd spent 4 years in the Army, including a deployment where I'd learned some very interesting skills. And before that, I'd grown up in a neighborhood where you learned early that sometimes the only way to deal with people who thought they were smarter than you was to prove them wrong in ways they'd never forget. I heard Vanessa coming back downstairs, her footsteps careful and measured now. She appeared in the doorway wearing her favorite pajamas, the ones that made her look innocent and vulnerable, with her hair pulled back and her face scrubbed clean. Cal? I'm not feeling very well. I think something I ate at the retreat didn't agree with me. She pressed a hand to her stomach and gave me a weak smile. I'm going to go to bed early. I looked at her for a long moment, this woman I'd loved and trusted and built a life with, who'd been lying to my face for months while planning to take half of everything I'd worked for. She stood there in her innocent pajamas, probably thinking about how easy it was to fool her dumb husband, maybe already planning her next rendezvous with Axel. Feel better, I said finally, turning back to my workbench. We'll talk in the morning. She hesitated, maybe sensing something different in my tone, but then nodded and headed upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard our bedroom door close. I sat in my basement workshop until dawn, reading through months of messages, studying photos, learning everything I could about Vanessa's secret life and her plans for our future. By the time the sun came up, I knew about Axel's startup, his downtown condo, his Tesla, and his habit of posting gym selfies on Instagram. I knew about Vanessa's plan to claim emotional abuse as grounds for divorce, her strategy for hiding assets, and her timeline for moving out. Most importantly, I knew that Vanessa Turner had made one critical mistake in her careful plan to destroy my life. She'd underestimated exactly who she was dealing with. That was the moment I stopped being her husband and started being her reckoning. The next morning, Vanessa was all smiles and coffee kisses, playing the part of the devoted wife recovering from a minor stomach bug. She even made pancakes, which should have been my first clue that something was seriously wrong, since Vanessa's idea of cooking usually involved photographing avocado toast for her Instagram story. "I feel so much better today," she announced, flipping a pancake with theatrical enthusiasm. Must have been something I ate at the retreat. You know how those hotel restaurants can be. I sat at our kitchen table, drinking coffee and watching her performance with new eyes. She was good, I had to give her that. The concerned wife act was polished, complete with little touches like asking about my plans for the day and reminding me that we needed to call the plumber about the bathroom sink. "Speaking of the retreat," I said casually, "how's your business plan coming along?" "The lifestyle coaching thing?" Her smile flickered for just a second. "Oh, really well. I'm making some great connections. There's this whole community of entrepreneurs who are really supportive of each other." "That's nice. Anyone I might know?" "Probably not. They're mostly in tech and consulting." She turned back to the stove, but I caught the slight tension in her shoulders. "Anyway, I should probably head to the co-working space later. I've got some calls to make." The co-working space. According to her phone, that's where she'd first met Axel 3 months ago. It was one of those trendy shared office setups downtown, all exposed brick and craft coffee, where people who called themselves entrepreneurs paid $50 a day to sit at communal tables and talk about their disruptive business models. "Sounds productive," I said. "I might swing by the iron rail after work. Haven't been there in a while." This time, the reaction was unmistakable. Vanessa's hand tightened on the spatula, and she was quiet for several seconds before responding. "That place is so depressing, California. All those sad, middle-aged guys drinking alone. You should try somewhere new. Interesting." My wife was trying to steer me away from my own favorite bar. The same bar where she'd been playing grab-ass with her boyfriend just 12 hours earlier. After Vanessa left for her business calls, I made a call of my own. To Mick Castellano, my old army buddy who now worked private security and had a useful collection of skills and contacts. "Cal Turner, you son of a bastard." Mick's gravelly voice boomed through the phone. "What's it been? 6 months? How's married life treating you?" "That's actually what I'm calling about. I need a favor, and it's the kind that requires discretion." There was a pause, and when Mick spoke again, his tone was more serious. "What kind of favor?" "The kind where my wife is cheating on me and I need some equipment to document it." "Ah, shit. I'm sorry, man. Yeah, I can help with that. You want to meet somewhere?" An hour later, I was sitting across from Mick in a booth at Danny's Diner, a greasy spoon on the south side that served coffee strong enough to get anyone back on their feet and kept to itself. Mick looked exactly the same as he had 5 years ago, built like a linebacker, with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "So, what's the situation?" he asked, sliding a small paper bag across the table. I gave him the condensed version, the late-night return, the hotel key, the messages I'd found. Mick listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making disgusted noises. "Classic cheating wife playbook," he said when I finished. "The business retreat cover story, the gaslighting, the future planning. I've seen it a dozen times in divorce cases. The good news is, you're ahead of the game." Most guys don't figure it out until they're served with papers. What's in the bag? Voice-activated recorder, smaller than a matchbook. Battery lasts 48 hours. Memory holds about 20 hours of conversation. Stick it in her purse, her car, wherever you think you'll get the best intel. I pocketed the device. What about the legal side, if this goes to court? Depends on your state's recording laws, but generally speaking, if she's planning to screw you in the divorce, you're allowed to protect yourself. Just don't do anything stupid like breaking into places or threatening people. I'm not planning to threaten anyone. Mick gave me a look that suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Cal, I've known you for 15 years. You're one of the smartest, most resourceful guys I ever served with. You're also stubborn as hell and you don't like being played for a fool. Just be smart about this, okay? Don't let anger make you do something that'll blow up in your face. After lunch, I drove to the Iron Rail. It was a Tuesday afternoon, so the place was mostly empty except for a few regulars and Mickey behind the bar, polishing glasses and watching a baseball game on the mounted TV. Cal! Where you been, stranger? Mickey was a transplant from Boston, 60-something with arms like tree trunks and a memory for faces that went back decades. Haven't seen you in 2 weeks? Been busy with work. Hey, Mickey, I want to ask you something and I need you to be straight with me. His expression grew more serious. Sure, what's up? My wife ever been in here? Blonde, about 5'6", usually dresses like she's going to a business meeting. Mickey's face told me everything I needed to know before he even opened his mouth. Ah, shit, Cal. Yeah, she's been in. Few times over the past couple months. Always with the same guy, young, flashy, drives one of those electric cars. They seem close? Close enough that I was wondering when you were going to show up asking about it. Mickey set down his glass and leaned on the bar. Look, I don't like getting in the middle of domestic stuff, but you're good people. They were all over each other, sitting in your usual booth, acting like they owned the place. Last night, the guy was talking loud about some business deal, throwing money around like he was trying to impress everyone. What kind of business deal? Some tech startup bullshit. Apps and algorithms and changing the world, you know the type. He kept going on about how he was going to be worth millions once his company went public. I thanked Mickey and spent the next hour nursing a beer and thinking. Vanessa hadn't just been cheating on me, she'd been flaunting it in my own space, probably getting off on the thrill of betraying me in a place where everyone knew my name. And this Axel character was clearly the kind of arrogant prick who thought money made him untouchable. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. I finished my beer and drove home, stopping at an electronics store on the way to pick up a few items that might come in handy. When I got to the house, I planted Mick's recording device in Vanessa's purse, which she'd left on the kitchen counter. Then I settled in to wait. Around 9 p.m., my laptop chimed with new activity on Vanessa's phone mirror. She was at the co-working space, according to her GPS, but the messages told a different story. Vanessa. Cal's being weird, asking questions about my retreats and stuff. Axel. Think he knows something? Vanessa. No way. He's too clueless, but maybe we should be more careful for a while. Axel. Or maybe it's time to speed up our timeline. I told you, once the Series B funding comes through next month, we can do whatever we want. Vanessa. I'm not ready yet. I need to figure out the asset situation first. Cal's got more money saved than he lets on. Axel. How much more? Vanessa. He's got like $60,000 in his retirement account, plus his half of the house equity. And he does some kind of side consulting work he thinks I don't know about. Actually, it was 87 grand in retirement savings, plus another 40,000 in a separate investment account that Vanessa definitely didn't know about. But who's counting? The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Vanessa and Axel discussing their plans in detail. They were thinking about Christmas as a timeline for Vanessa to file for divorce, giving them time to document patterns of emotional neglect and establish grounds for a larger settlement. But the really interesting part came at the end. Axel. What if we just made it easier on ourselves? Vanessa. What do you mean? Axel. I mean, what if Cal had some kind of incident? Nothing serious, just something that made him look unstable. Angry outbursts, maybe some property damage. Make it easier to get a restraining order. Vanessa. You mean like provoke him into doing something stupid? Axel. I'm just saying, guys like Cal have a breaking point. Push the right buttons, and he'll do something that makes your divorce case a lot simpler. I sat back in my chair, feeling that cold, sharp sensation in my chest again. They weren't just planning to cheat me out of my money. They were planning to set me up, to manipulate me into some kind of public breakdown that would paint me as the unstable, abusive husband. Well, congratulations, Vanessa. You found my breaking point. But here's what you didn't count on. I break smart. I spent the rest of the evening researching Axel Quinn and his startup, DigiFlow Solutions. Turns out, Mr. Hotshot Entrepreneur had some interesting financial problems. His company was burning through cash faster than they were bringing it in, and the Series B funding he kept bragging about was far from guaranteed. In fact, according to some industry blogs I found, DigiFlow was about 6 weeks away from running out of operating capital. More importantly, Axel had a pattern. This wasn't his first startup, and it wasn't his first time getting involved with a married woman. 3 years ago, he'd been sued by a former business partner who claimed Axel had seduced his wife as part of a scheme to steal proprietary software code. The case had been settled out of court, but the details were still available in public records. Axel Quinn wasn't just an arrogant fraud, he was a skilled manipulator who used charm and romance to exploit people for financial advantage. And my wife was his newest target. By the time Vanessa came home at midnight, spinning some story about a late networking event, I had a complete dossier on her boyfriend and a plan that would make their little scheme look like amateur hour. "How was your evening?" she asked, kissing me on the cheek with lips that probably still tasted like another man. "Quiet," I said. "Just watched some TV and did some work." "How about you? Productive networking?" "Very productive. I think I'm really starting to build something here." "That's great, honey. I'm proud of you for following your dreams." She smiled and headed upstairs, probably thinking about how easy it was to fool her stupid husband, maybe already planning tomorrow's lies. But as I sat in my basement workshop that night, listening to the recording device I'd retrieved from her purse, 43 minutes of Vanessa and Axel planning my destruction in explicit detail, I couldn't help but smile. They wanted to push me to my breaking point? Game on. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day doing reconnaissance. First stop, Axel's downtown condo, a sleek glass tower that probably cost more per month than most people made in a year. I parked across the street and watched the building for 2 hours, noting the security cameras, the doorman schedule, and most importantly, the parking garage entrance. Axel's Tesla was easy to spot, a bright red Model S with vanity plates that read "Disrupt." Because of course they did. From there, I drove to the co-working space where Vanessa spent her days building her brand. It was exactly what I'd expected. Exposed brick walls, Edison bulb lighting, and 20-somethings in designer hoodies talking loudly about their revolutionary ideas while drinking $15 coffee drinks. I found a cafe across the street and settled in with a laptop and a clear view of the entrance. Around noon, I was rewarded with the sight of Vanessa and Axel leaving together, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. They walked 3 blocks to an upscale lunch spot, the kind of place that served small plates for big prices and had a wait list for weekend reservations. I followed at a distance and managed to get a table with a clear sightline to their booth. Watching them together was like seeing my wife with a completely different personality. With me, Vanessa was always stressed, always talking about her problems and her plans and how the world wasn't giving her the opportunities she deserved. But with Axel, she was animated, flirtatious, hanging on his every word like he was revealing the secrets of the universe. And Axel, Christ, what a piece of work. Everything about him screamed manufactured success, from his perfectly styled hair to his designer casual outfit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He had that tech bro confidence, the kind that comes from having just enough money to feel superior, but not enough to actually be secure. I activated the voice recording app on my phone and managed to catch fragments of their conversation. They were discussing their timeline again, with Axel pushing for Vanessa to accelerate her divorce plans and Vanessa expressing concern about managing Cal's reaction. The key is to make him think it's his fault, Axel was saying. Classic manipulation. Make him feel like he drove you away, and he'll be so busy feeling guilty that he won't fight the settlement. But what if he gets suspicious about you? Baby, look at me. Axel gestured to himself with the kind of casual arrogance that made me want to throw something. Then look at your husband. You think anyone's going to believe you'd leave this for that? Vanessa giggled, actually giggled, and reached across the table to touch his hand. You're terrible. I'm realistic. Cal Turner is a 42-year-old IT guy who drives a 10-year-old Honda and thinks a big night out is getting drunk in some dive bar. I'm a tech entrepreneur with a Tesla and a condo downtown. This isn't even a competition. That's when I decided that Axel Quinn needed to learn a very important lesson about underestimating people. After lunch, they went back to the co-working space, but separated at the entrance, probably trying to maintain some pretense of discretion. I waited until Vanessa was inside, then followed Axel to the parking garage beneath his building. The beauty of modern cars is that they're basically computers on wheels, and computers are something I understand very, very well. It took me about 15 minutes to access the Tesla's onboard system through a vulnerability in the mobile app interface, a trick I'd learned during a security consulting job last year. I didn't do anything dramatic. Just programmed a few minor glitches that would activate over the next week. Random music changes, air conditioning adjustments, navigation system errors that would route him to inconvenient locations. Nothing dangerous, nothing that couldn't be explained as software bugs, but enough to make his life annoying and unpredictable. The real masterpiece, though, was the surprise I left in his car. 3 dozen printed photos scattered across the driver's seat and floor. Screenshots from Vanessa's phone showing their text conversations, including several particularly explicit images she'd sent him. Along with a handwritten note. Enjoying the ride, Axel? Your move. CT. Then I went home and waited. The first call came around 6 p.m. Vanessa, hysterical. Cal, something's wrong with Axel's car. Someone broke into it and left all these horrible photos. He thinks someone's been watching us. That's terrible, I said, injecting just the right amount of concern into my voice. Did you call the police? We can't call the police. The photos. They're private, personal. Someone must have hacked my phone or something. Honey, that's really serious. If someone's been spying on you, we should definitely report it. I mean, what kind of photos are we talking about here? There was a long pause. Just personal photos, between friends. It's not what it looks like. I'm sure it's not. But if someone's targeting you, we need to take this seriously. Maybe I should come down there and— No! No, that's not necessary. Axel and I can handle this. It's probably just some random creep who got lucky with a phishing email or something. After she hung up, I poured myself a bourbon and settled in to monitor her phone. The panicked messages between Vanessa and Axel were deeply satisfying. Axel. This is messed up. Someone knows everything. Vanessa. How is that possible? I'm so careful with my phone. Axel. Maybe your husband's not as stupid as we thought. Vanessa. Cal couldn't hack a vending machine. This has to be something else. Axel. I'm telling you, something's not right. First my car starts acting weird, now this. Maybe we should cool it for a while. Vanessa. You're being paranoid. It's probably just some random hacker. Axel. Random hackers don't leave notes signed with your husband's initials. That night, Vanessa came home looking shaken and pale. She tried to act normal, making small talk about her day and asking about mine, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Someone had invaded her secret world, and she didn't know how or why. "Everything okay?" I asked over dinner. "You seem tense." "Just work stress. Some technical problems with the co-working space's internet. Really frustrating." "That sucks. Anything I can help with?" "I know a thing or two about technical problems." She gave me a sharp look, and for a moment, I thought she might be starting to suspect something, but then she shook her head and forced a smile. "No, it's fine. Just one of those days, you know?" Over the next week, I escalated the pressure. Axel's Tesla continued to malfunction in small but irritating ways. The GPS would randomly route him through construction zones, the music would switch to polka stations, the air conditioning would blast at random intervals. Nothing dangerous enough to cause an accident, but enough to make him paranoid and frustrated. Meanwhile, I started leaving little gifts around his building. Photos slipped under his door showing him and Vanessa together at various locations. Screenshots of their text conversations printed out and left on his windshield. A USB drive containing audio recordings from the device I'd planted in Vanessa's purse, delivered to his office with a note that simply said, "Thought you might want to hear this." The psychological pressure was working. According to Vanessa's phone, Axel was becoming increasingly paranoid and erratic. He'd hired a private investigator to sweep his apartment for surveillance equipment, changed his phone number twice, and even considered filing a police report before realizing he'd have to explain why someone was documenting his affair. But the real breakthrough came when I discovered something interesting in Axel's financial records. Information that was surprisingly easy to access once I had his social security number from a background check website. Axel Quinn wasn't just a cheating scumbag, he was also a fraud. His startup was completely insolvent, surviving on credit cards and personal loans. The Series B funding he kept bragging about was fictional, and he was about 3 weeks away from bankruptcy. Even worse, he'd been using his relationship with Vanessa to gain access to information about my finances, probably planning to target me for some kind of investment scam once they were married. That's when I decided it was time to end this charade once and for all. I spent 2 days preparing for what I privately called the reveal, a carefully orchestrated confrontation that would expose everything while keeping me completely within legal boundaries. The location would be the Iron Rail, my home turf, where Mickey and the regulars could serve as witnesses. The timing would be Friday evening, when the bar was busy enough to provide an audience, but not so crowded that things could get out of hand. On Thursday night, I sent Axel a text from a burner phone. "Meet me at the Iron Rail tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone, or everyone you know gets copies of everything I have. CT." Then I sent a similar message to Vanessa. "I know about Axel. We need to talk. Iron Rail, 8 p.m. tomorrow. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Friday evening, I arrived at the bar early and took my usual seat, the booth in the back corner where I could see both entrances and had a clear view of the entire room. Mickey gave me a knowing nod and set up a small digital recorder on the bar, insurance, in case things went sideways. Vanessa arrived first, looking like she was walking to her own execution. She slid into the booth across from me, her hands shaking as she tried to maintain her composure. "Cal, I can explain." "Don't." I held up a hand to stop her. "Just sit there and wait. Your boyfriend will be here in a few minutes, and then we're going to have a conversation about the future." Axel showed up 10 minutes later, trying to project confidence but clearly rattled. He spotted our booth and walked over like he was approaching a wild animal, every step careful and calculated. Cal Turner, I presume. He attempted a smile that came across as more of a grimace. "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "Sit down, Axel. We have a lot to discuss." He slid into the booth next to Vanessa, and I had to admire the way they instinctively moved apart from each other, trying to maintain some pretense of innocence even now. "Let me start with what I know," I said, pulling out a manila folder and setting it on the table. "Vanessa, you've been cheating on me for at least 3 months. probably longer. You've been using fake business retreats and networking events as cover stories while you conduct your affair. You've been discussing divorce strategies and asset division with your boyfriend, including plans to manipulate me into some kind of public breakdown that would support claims of emotional abuse. Vanessa's face went white, but she didn't deny it. Axel, you're a serial predator who targets married women as part of elaborate financial scams. Your startup is bankrupt, your Series B funding is fictional, and you're about 3 weeks away from personal bankruptcy. You've been using your relationship with my wife to gather information about my finances, probably planning some kind of investment fraud once you two were officially together. Axel started to object, but I cut him off. I have recordings, photos, financial records, and documented evidence of everything I just described. The question now is what we're going to do about it. The bar had gone quiet around us, with Mickey and several regulars pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. "What do you want?" Vanessa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled and pulled out a document from the folder. Divorce papers. I had them drawn up yesterday. Very simple, very clean. You get nothing except your personal belongings and whatever debt you've accumulated on your own credit cards. I keep the house, the savings, and my retirement accounts. You sign these tonight and we're done. That's not fair, Vanessa found her voice, anger overriding fear. I'm entitled to half of everything. I've been married to you for 8 years. You're entitled to what I give you, which is nothing. Because if you don't sign these papers right now, I'm going to make both of your lives very, very difficult. I pulled out my phone and opened a draft email. I've prepared a comprehensive dossier of your affair, including photos, recordings, and financial evidence of Axel's fraud. With one click, this goes to your families, your friends, your social media contacts, and in Axel's case, his business partners and potential investors. I've also prepared a report for the State Attorney General's office detailing his pattern of relationship fraud and financial crimes. Axel was sweating now, his carefully styled hair starting to wilt under the pressure. You can't prove anything. Those recordings were made illegally. Actually, they weren't. I recorded conversations in my own home, and I documented activities in public spaces. Everything I have is completely admissible in court. But more importantly, I don't need to prove anything in court. I just need to destroy your reputations, which I can do with a single email. The three of us sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of the situation settling over them. Finally, Vanessa reached for the pen I'd placed on the table. Where do I sign? 20 minutes later, I was officially divorced, and Vanessa was officially broke. She signed every document without reading them, her hands shaking with rage and humiliation. Axel tried to leave halfway through the process, but I reminded him that he still had a choice between cooperation and complete exposure. As they prepared to leave, Vanessa turned back to me with tears of fury in her eyes. You think you're so smart, Cal. But you just threw away 8 years of marriage over a stupid mistake. I could have worked this out. We could have gone to counseling. Vanessa, I interrupted, you spent 3 months planning to destroy my life and steal everything I've worked for. The only mistake here was thinking I was too stupid to figure it out. She stormed out of the bar, followed by Axel, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. The other patrons watched them go, then turned back to their drinks with the satisfied air of people who'd just witnessed justice being served. Mickey walked over and set a fresh bourbon in front of me. On the house, he said. That was the most civilized divorce I've ever seen. I raised the glass in a mock toast to the empty booth across from me. To Vanessa Turner, who put divorce papers on the table to scare me. I signed them, and she hysterically said it was just a joke. But I was done with jokes. The bar erupted in applause, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. But I wasn't quite finished yet. Over the next month, I systematically dismantled the lives they'd tried to build on the ruins of mine. I sent the evidence of Axel's fraud to his remaining business partners, his landlord, and his creditors. Within 2 weeks, his company was officially dissolved, and he was facing multiple civil lawsuits. The last I heard, he'd moved back in with his parents in Ohio and was working at a call center. Vanessa tried to rebuild her social media presence, but the screenshots of her messages had somehow found their way to several gossip blogs and local Facebook groups. Her reputation as a lifestyle coach was permanently destroyed, and she ended up moving to another state to escape the embarrassment. As for me, I kept the house, the savings, and my dignity. I also kept going to the Iron Rail, where I became something of a local legend, the guy who'd outplayed his cheating wife and her scumbag boyfriend without breaking a single law. 6 months later, I was sitting in my usual booth when Mickey brought over a drink I hadn't ordered. "From the lady at the bar," he said, nodding toward an attractive brunette who was smiling in my direction. I walked over and introduced myself. Her name was Sarah. She was a nurse at the local hospital, and she'd heard about my story through a friend of a friend. "I have to ask," she said, after we'd been talking for a few minutes. "Is it true that you hacked your ex-wife's phone and sabotaged her boyfriend's car?" I smiled and took a sip of my bourbon. "I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm just a boring IT guy who got lucky in his divorce." She laughed, and I knew I was going to like her. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting smart, getting even, and getting on with your life.